I didn't realize I wasn't her safe place anymore until I caught myself hesitating before telling her something that hurt. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't know what I would get back. There's a difference between not trusting someone and not feeling held by them. I didn't have language for that difference back then. I only knew that something quiet inside me had started closing, one small decision at a time. At first, I thought it was stress. Work had been heavy for both of us. Long days, short nights, the kind of exhaustion that settles into your bones and makes everything feel dull. It made sense that we weren't as talkative. It made sense that we didn't linger in conversations the way we used to. That's what I told myself. It's easy to explain things away when nothing is technically wrong. Her name was Claire. We met in the least romantic way possible. A mutual friend invited both of us to a small housewarming party. Nothing loud, nothing crowded, just people sitting around with plastic cups and half-finished conversations. Claire was sitting on the floor against the wall, legs crossed, holding a drink she wasn't really drinking. She looked comfortable in her own quiet, which immediately made me feel less aware of mine. I sat near her because there was space, and because I didn't feel like forcing myself into a louder corner of the room. We didn't start talking right away. At some point she glanced at me and said, "Do you ever come to these things and immediately regret it?" I laughed, not because it was clever, but because it was honest. That became our rhythm. Not impressing each other, not performing, just admitting things. We talked about being tired all the time, about not knowing if we were doing adulthood correctly, about how strange it is to feel behind even when you're technically doing fine. When the night ended, I realized I didn't know what she did for work. I didn't know her big dreams. I didn't know her favorite movies. But I knew how she made me feel. Calm. Like I didn't need to be sharper or funnier or more interesting. Just present. She texted me the next day. A simple message. "Still recovering from last night." I replied. That turned into a conversation that lasted most of the afternoon. Not constant texting. Just steady. A message here. A reply there. Space to breathe between thoughts. We started seeing each other slowly. Coffee after work. Walks with no destination. Dinner at places we didn't care about because it wasn't really about the food. There was no moment where I thought, this is it. There was a growing sense of ease. And ease is dangerous, in a good way. Because once you experience it, you don't want to go back to chaos. Claire felt safe to me in a way I hadn't experienced before. Not exciting safe. Not fireworks safe. Quiet safe. I could tell her when I was overwhelmed. I could tell her when I felt insecure. I could tell her when something from my past came up and I didn't know why it bothered me. She listened. Not in a fix-it way. Not in a dismissive way. She listened like she wasn't planning her response. And when she spoke, it was usually simple. "That makes sense. I get why you'd feel that. I'm here." Those 3 phrases became everything. I started to think of her as the place I landed. Bad day. Claire. Good news. Claire. Random thought at midnight. Claire. It didn't feel dependent. It felt mutual. She leaned on me too. She told me about her family. About the pressure she felt to always seem okay. About how she hated asking for help because she didn't want to be a burden. I told her she wasn't. I meant it. We moved in together after almost 2 years. Not because we had a grand plan. Not because of pressure. We were already spending most nights at each other's places. Already splitting groceries. Already arguing playfully about whose turn it was to take out the trash. It felt practical. Our apartment wasn't special. 2nd floor. Thin walls. A weird smell in the hallway we never figured out. But it felt like ours. The first few months were full of small discoveries. Claire always forgot where she put her keys. I always left cabinet doors open. She liked falling asleep to background noise. I liked silence. We compromised. We learned. We adjusted. At night, we'd lie in bed and talk. Not deep, heavy conversations. Sometimes, but mostly small things. Something annoying that happened at work. A weird thought. A memory from childhood. We talked until one of us fell asleep mid-sentence. There was a sense that no matter how messy the day was, we would process it together before it ended. That mattered more than I realized. Looking back, I think that was when she was my safe place. Not because she solved my problems, but because I didn't feel alone inside them. I didn't notice when it started changing. That's the part that still bothers me. I wish I could point to a moment. A sentence. A fight. Something clean. But it didn't happen like that. It happened the way rust spreads. Quietly. Slowly. Almost invisibly. The first thing that changed was timing. I'd come home and start telling her about something, and she'd say, Hold on. Without looking up. Not in a rude way. Just distracted. She'd finish a text. Then another. Then she'd say, "Sorry, what were you saying?" And I'd repeat myself. At first, I didn't mind. Everyone gets distracted. Phones exist. Life is noisy. But repetition does something subtle to your brain. It makes you question whether what you're saying is worth saying. Sometimes I'd decide it wasn't. So I'd say, "Never mind." She'd say, "Okay." Not because she didn't care, but because she didn't realize I had just closed the door. We still spent time together. We still watched shows. Still ate dinner at the same table. From the outside, nothing looked wrong. But inside me, something had started shifting. I noticed I was filtering. If I had a stressful day, I'd ask myself, is this worth bringing up? If I felt insecure about something, I'd think, do I want to deal with explaining this? If I felt hurt by something small, I'd tell myself, it's not a big deal. I started carrying things instead of handing them to her. Not because she told me to. Because I didn't feel that automatic pull anymore. She stopped coming to me first with her bad days too. She'd come home already processed, already calmer, already past it. I'd ask, "How was your day?" She'd say, "Fine." Sometimes later I'd hear about something stressful that happened. Something big. Something I would have expected to be part of our nightly debrief. She'd mention it casually. "Oh yeah, I told Sarah about that earlier." Sarah was a coworker. They had gotten close. Which was fine. People are allowed to have other people. I wasn't jealous. Not in the obvious sense. But I felt something I didn't have a name for. Displacement. I wasn't the first place anymore. I didn't confront her. Not because I was scared of her reaction, but because I didn't know how to explain a feeling that didn't have sharp edges. How do you say, "I miss being where you land," without sounding needy, without sounding controlling, without sounding like you're accusing someone of something they didn't intend to do? So I stayed quiet. And quiet became a habit. We still said, "I love you." But it started sounding like muscle memory. Something you say when you leave. Something you say before sleep. The words didn't disappear. The weight behind them thinned. Some nights we lay in bed facing opposite directions. Not fighting. Not upset. Just separate. I'd stare at the ceiling and feel a low-level ache I couldn't locate. Not heartbreak. Not anger. Something duller. Like realizing you're slowly losing a language you used to speak fluently. I told myself this was normal. Long-term relationships settle. They change shape. They aren't supposed to feel like the beginning forever. All true. But there's a difference between settling and distancing. I didn't want to admit which one we were doing. The moment that finally made me stop lying to myself wasn't dramatic. It was a Wednesday. I had a rough day. Nothing catastrophic. Just layered annoyances. A meeting that went badly. A comment from my boss that stuck in my head. That kind of day where everything feels heavier than it should. On the drive home, I rehearsed how I'd tell Claire about it. Not word for word. Just the idea. I imagined sitting on the couch, talking, feeling that familiar release. I walked into the apartment. Claire was on the couch, laptop open, headphones in. She glanced up. "Hey." "Hey," I said. I sat next to her. She kept typing. I waited. A minute passed. Then another. She didn't take her headphones off. She didn't ask how I was. She wasn't doing anything wrong. She was just in her own world. And for the first time, I didn't feel like interrupting. Not because I didn't want to talk. Because I didn't feel like I would be received. I sat there quietly. Eventually, I stood up and went to the bedroom. I lay on the bed staring at the wall. And I realized something that scared me. I didn't feel like she was the place I went with pain anymore. Not because she was unsafe. Not because she was cruel. But because she felt unavailable in a way that didn't have an obvious cause. That's when the thought formed, fully and clearly, for the first time. I wasn't her safe place anymore. And I didn't know if she was still mine. Once that thought existed, I couldn't undo it. I didn't walk out. I didn't confront her. I didn't sit her down for a serious conversation. I just started noticing everything. Not in a hypervigilant way. More like the way you notice a crack in a wall after someone points it out. You weren't looking for it before. Now you see it every time you pass. I noticed how often she took calls in the other room. Not secretively. Not hiding. Just elsewhere. I noticed how she would vent about work to her friends on the phone, pacing the kitchen, voice animated, hands moving. Then she'd come back into the living room calm. Finished. Processed. I was getting the version of her that had already emptied herself somewhere else. I noticed how I stopped telling her when I was overwhelmed. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I didn't want to feel like I was forcing my feelings into a space that wasn't open. That's a strange thing to realize about someone you live with. We still functioned well on the surface. Bills got paid. Groceries got bought. We discussed logistics easily. What time are you home? Did you take the trash out? Do we need detergent? We were good partners. We just weren't intimate in the way that mattered to me anymore. There's a kind of intimacy that has nothing to do with sex. It's the sense that someone is holding your inner world with you, that they're carrying a small part of it, even when you're not speaking. That was what I felt slipping. Some nights I would think about bringing it up. I'd imagine saying something simple. I feel a little disconnected lately. I miss talking like we used to. I don't always feel close to you anymore. But every version sounded like the start of something I didn't know how to finish. And I was afraid of two possible outcomes. 1, she'd tell me everything was fine. 2, she'd agree. Both felt terrifying. So I did nothing. And doing nothing became its own decision. The longer I stayed quiet, the more normal the distance felt. Not good, just familiar. Familiar can be more dangerous than bad. Bad motivates you to change. Familiar convinces you this is just how things are now. I started finding other ways to self-soothe. Longer showers. Staying at work later than necessary. Scrolling until my eyes hurt. None of it fixed anything. It just filled space. Claire didn't seem unhappy. That confused me. She laughed at her phone. She made plans. She talked about things she wanted to do in the future. Sometimes she included me in those sentences. Sometimes she didn't. It didn't feel intentional. It felt unconsidered, which somehow hurt more. I kept telling myself I was being dramatic, that I was romanticizing the early stage of our relationship, that I was expecting too much. People grow. People change. True. But there's a difference between growing together and growing adjacent. We were becoming adjacent. The moment that solidified it didn't involve tears or raised voices. It involved dinner. I came home early one evening. Earlier than usual. I hadn't told Claire. I decided, on a small impulse, to cook. Not a big gesture. Not a date night production. Just pasta. Something warm. Something shared. I texted her. Home early. Making dinner. No response. I didn't think much of it. She was probably busy. I cooked. I set the table. 2 plates. 2 forks. I even lit a candle and immediately felt a little stupid for doing it. I left it anyway. Claire came home about 40 minutes later than she normally did. She walked in, dropped her bag, and said, "Hey." "Hey," I said. "Dinner's almost ready." She nodded and went to wash her hands. When she came back, she looked at the table. "Oh," she said. "You cooked?" "Yeah," I said. "Thought we could eat together." There was a pause. Not long. Not dramatic. Just long enough to register. "I already ate," she said. "I grabbed something with Mark after work. Forgot to tell you." Mark was another coworker. She said it casually, like she was telling me what she had for lunch. "Oh," I said. She sat down anyway. Pulled out her phone. I served myself. We sat there in silence. She scrolled. I chewed. She didn't ask how my day was. She didn't ask why I was home early. She didn't apologize. Not because she was inconsiderate, but because it hadn't occurred to her that it might matter. That was the moment. Not because she ate with someone else. Not because plans changed. But because I wasn't part of the equation at all. She hadn't thought. I should tell him. She hadn't thought. He might be cooking. She hadn't thought. This affects us. I wasn't a variable anymore. I was background. I felt something in my chest loosen and collapse at the same time. Not heartbreak. Not rage. Recognition. I was no longer the person she instinctively checked in with. I was no longer her safe place. And I didn't think she was mine either. I didn't say anything. I didn't know how. "What do you say? You forgot about me? You don't think about me? I feel invisible." All of it sounded small in my head. Embarrassing. So I ate my pasta. I tasted almost nothing. The candle burned between us like a quiet joke. That night in bed, Claire fell asleep quickly. I stared at the ceiling. I felt incredibly awake. I wasn't thinking about leaving. I wasn't planning anything. I was just sitting with the truth. Staying started to feel heavier than leaving. But leaving still felt impossible. There's a strange space you enter when you realize something is wrong, but don't know what to do with that knowledge. You don't feel empowered. You feel suspended. I started withdrawing in ways I didn't announce. I stopped initiating conversations. I stopped suggesting plans. I stopped offering up my inner world. Not to punish her. Not consciously. It was self-preservation. If I didn't reach, I couldn't feel the absence as sharply. Claire didn't comment on the change, which told me everything. We became very good at coexisting. We were polite, functional, calm. From the outside, we probably looked stable. Inside, I felt like I was slowly erasing myself. We eventually had a conversation. Not because I planned it. Not because I finally worked up the courage. It happened one morning in the kitchen while we were both half awake. Claire said, "Do you feel weird lately?" I froze. "Yeah," I said. She leaned against the counter. "I don't know," she said. "I feel like we're kind of distant." The word sat between us. Distant. Not broken. Not unhappy. Distant. I took a breath. "I don't really feel like I'm your person anymore," I said. She looked surprised. "Genuinely. What do you mean?" I struggled. "I don't feel like you come to me first," I said. "With stuff. With stress. With anything, really." She frowned slightly. "I still care about you," she said. "I know," I said. That wasn't what I had said. We stood there in silence. She didn't deny it. She didn't confirm it. She didn't offer a solution. Eventually she said, "I don't want to fight." "I don't either," I said. And we didn't. We also didn't fix anything. That conversation became a reference point, not a turning point. We both knew something was wrong. We just didn't know how to reach each other anymore. After that, we moved even more carefully, like two people walking around a crack in the ground, pretending it isn't there. I started realizing I was staying for reasons that had nothing to do with love, fear, comfort, habit, the idea of starting over in my 30s, the embarrassment of telling people it didn't work, the weight of shared history. None of those are good reasons, but they are powerful ones. So I stayed, longer than I should have. I don't know exactly when Claire decided to leave emotionally, or if she even experienced it as leaving. Maybe she just slowly built a life that didn't center me anymore. One night, months later, she said she was thinking about staying with a friend for a while. "Just some space," she said. My first feeling was relief. Not sadness. Not anger. Relief. That scared me more than anything else. I nodded. "Okay," I said. She looked like she expected me to argue. I didn't. She packed a small bag. She hugged me before she left. It felt familiar. And empty. The apartment felt different immediately. Not quieter. It had already been quiet. Hollower. I didn't cry that night. I sat on the couch and stared at nothing. I thought about all the times I had swallowed something I wanted to say. All the nights I had turned inward instead of outward. All the ways I had participated in my own disappearance. Claire texted me a few days later. "I think it's better if I stay here longer." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Yeah, that makes sense." That was it. No official breakup. No final talk. Just an understanding. We coordinated logistics. Who would take what? Who would keep the apartment? Practical conversations. Emotionless. The day she came to get the rest of her things, she looked smaller to me. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone I used to know very well and now barely recognized. We hugged. It was brief. Polite. She said, "I'm sorry." I said, "Me too." Neither of us clarified what we were apologizing for. Then she left. After she was gone, I walked through the apartment slowly. Not reminiscing. Not crying. Just noticing space. Where her shoes used to be. Where her mug used to sit. Where her presence used to exist. I realized something uncomfortable. I had been grieving the relationship for a long time. The actual ending felt more like confirmation than loss. That doesn't make it painless. It just makes it quieter. Sometimes I think about Claire. Not with anger. Not with longing. Just with a kind of distant tenderness. Like thinking about a chapter of your life you outgrew. I don't know if I'll ever be someone's safe place again. I hope I am. I know I want to be. But I also know this. I don't want to stay in a place where I feel like I have to earn access to someone's inner world. I don't want to slowly shrink again. I wasn't her safe place anymore. And I stayed longer than I should have after I realized it. That's the part one live with now. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Like most real endings. After Claire took the last box and closed the door behind her, I stood in the hallway for a long time. Not leaning against the wall. Not sliding down dramatically. Just standing there. Like my body hadn't received new instructions yet. The apartment didn't feel unfamiliar. That surprised me. I thought it would feel wrong without her. Empty in a sharp way. Instead, it felt honest. Like the space had finally stopped pretending to be full. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch where we used to sit together. Same cushions. Same faint indentation where she preferred to curl up. Same throw blanket folded over the armrest. All the physical evidence of us was still there. But the emotional weight had shifted. I didn't feel abandoned. I didn't feel betrayed. I felt done. Not in a resolved way. Not in a healthy, empowered way. More like a quiet exhaustion that had been building for years finally reached the point where it couldn't hold itself up anymore. I thought about all the nights I had gone to bed feeling slightly lonely without knowing why. All the mornings I had woken up already tired. All the conversations I had rehearsed in my head and never spoken. All the times I had minimized my own needs because I didn't want to be too much. I realized something uncomfortable. By the time Claire physically left, I had already left emotionally. I just hadn't admitted it to myself. That realization didn't make me feel better. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like recognizing how long I had been abandoning myself. The first few weeks alone were strangely calm. Not peaceful, just quiet in a way that didn't require effort. I didn't have to wonder if I was talking too much. I didn't have to decide whether something was worth sharing. I didn't have to read microsignals to figure out if someone was present or not. I could exist without monitoring myself. That felt new. And also sad, because it meant I had been doing that monitoring for a long time. I noticed small things. How I automatically reached for my phone when something happened, then stopped. How I still thought in terms of we, even when there was no we anymore. How I avoided certain grocery store aisles because they reminded me of meals we used to cook together. None of it was dramatic, just layers of quiet adjustment. People asked how I was doing. I said, I'm okay. And I meant something close to okay. Not good, not terrible. Functional, which felt accurate. At night, the apartment felt different than I expected. Not louder, not scarier, just still. I started sleeping better. That surprised me. I hadn't realized how tense my body had been. How often I fell asleep next to someone while feeling alone. There's a unique kind of loneliness that comes from being with someone who isn't really with you. It's heavier than solitude, because solitude at least matches its shape. Sometimes I thought about reaching out to Claire, not to get back together. Not even to talk about what happened, just to ask if she was okay. Then I realized I didn't actually need to know. Whatever answer she gave wouldn't change anything. We weren't unsafe to each other. We just weren't home to each other anymore. That distinction mattered. I started reflecting on when she stopped being my safe place. Not in a blame-focused way, not to assign fault, just to understand. I don't think it happened in one moment. I think it happened in dozens of tiny moments where I felt unseen and chose silence. Where she felt overwhelmed and chose distance, where we both chose comfort over discomfort, where we both chose avoiding hard conversations instead of risking them. No villain, no monster, just two people slowly losing access to each other's inner worlds. That feels harder to accept than a dramatic ending, because dramatic endings give you something to point at. This kind of ending gives you nothing but a feeling. I also started noticing something else. How easily I took responsibility for the entire collapse. How quickly my mind went to. If I had spoken up earlier. If I had been more patient. If I had communicated better. Some of that is true. I could have spoken sooner. I could have named my needs earlier. But relationships don't collapse because of one person. They collapse because both people stop reaching. In different ways. At different speeds. I wasn't her safe place anymore. But she also wasn't mine. We both lost something. We just didn't lose it at the same time. I ran into Claire once, months later, at a coffee shop near our old apartment. I saw her before she saw me. She was standing in line, looking at her phone, hair pulled back in a way I recognized. For a second, my body reacted before my brain did. A tightening, a memory surge. Then it settled. She turned and noticed me. We both froze. Not dramatically, just a mutual pause. Hey, she said. Hey, I said. We stood there awkwardly. How are you? She asked. Okay, I said. She nodded. Yeah, me too. There was nothing underneath the words. No hidden message. No longing. No resentment. Just two people acknowledging each other's existence. I should get going, she said. Yeah, I said. She smiled. It was polite. Not warm. Not cold. Then she walked out. I sat down with my coffee and realized something quietly significant. I didn't miss her. I missed who we were at the beginning. I missed feeling chosen. I missed feeling like someone's first instinct. But I didn't miss the version of the relationship we had become. That distinction felt important. It didn't feel empowering. It didn't feel triumphant. It just felt accurate. There are nights now when I think about what being a safe place actually means. It doesn't mean fixing everything. It doesn't mean having the right answers. It means being the person someone turns toward instead of away from. It means emotional availability, consistency, curiosity, care that shows up even when it's inconvenient. I know I want to be that for someone again. And I know I don't want to accept less than that in return. Not because I deserve perfection. Not because I'm special, but because I've lived what it feels like to slowly disappear inside a relationship. I don't want to do that again. Sometimes I wonder if Claire realized when she stopped coming to me first. If she noticed the shift. If she felt it too and just didn't know what to call it. I'll never know. And I've made peace with not knowing. Not in a clean, healed way. Just in a realistic way. Some questions don't get answers. Some stories don't get neat endings. They just stop. I wasn't her safe place anymore. Not because she hated me. Not because she wanted to hurt me. Not because either of us failed spectacularly. It happened quietly. Like most real losses. And I stayed longer than I should have after I felt it. Not because I believed it would magically change. Not because I was noble. But because I was afraid of what it would mean to leave. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of admitting something important had ended. I don't carry anger toward her. I don't carry nostalgia in a way that hurts. I carry understanding. And a quiet sadness. The kind that doesn't demand attention. The kind that just exists. Like a scar you stop noticing until something brushes against it. If I've learned anything, it's not a lesson I would put on a poster. It's not inspiring. It's simple. Pay attention to where you feel safe. Pay attention to where you don't. Pay attention to the places you keep shrinking. Because love doesn't always leave loudly. Sometimes it leaves by making you feel alone while you're still holding someone's hand. I wasn't her safe place anymore. And I didn't leave the moment I realized it. I stayed. I adjusted. I hoped. I went quiet. Until one day, staying felt heavier than leaving. That's how it ended. Not with a fight. Not with betrayal. Not with a final speech. Just two people quietly stepping out of each other's inner lives. And continuing on. Separately. Quietly. Like most real endings.